From the moment we're born, our beliefs begin to form. Through every experience, conversation, and environment we're exposed to, our mind starts collecting data. It builds a framework, a set of internal rules that tells us how the world works and how we fit into it. These beliefs become the lens through which we see everything: opportunity, failure, love, worth, pain, success, and most importantly, they dictate how we act or don't act. They shape our behavior in ways we often don't even recognize. If you believe you're not smart enough, you won't apply for that job. If you believe people can't be trusted, you'll push away relationships. If you believe you're destined to struggle, you'll subconsciously sabotage anything that looks like success. This is why belief is so powerful, not because it's always true, but because we treat it as if it is. We rarely question the foundation we're building our lives on. If someone told you at a young age that you weren't good enough, or that failure meant you're a failure, that idea may have taken root in your mind, and now, even as an adult, you find yourself behaving in ways that align with that old belief. You avoid risk. You don't speak up. You settle. And it feels natural, because your behavior is following the script that your beliefs are writing. The brain loves consistency. It wants your actions to match your thoughts. This is why we tend to reinforce our beliefs by filtering the world in a way that confirms them. If you believe people don't like you, you'll notice every frown, every closed-off posture, and ignore the smiles or compliments. If you believe you're unlucky, you'll focus on everything that goes wrong while dismissing all the things that went right. This cycle keeps you stuck. Your beliefs create your behavior creates your results, and your results then reinforce the original belief. But here's the truth. Beliefs are not facts. They're stories. Stories you've repeated so often that they feel like facts. And like any story, they can be edited, challenged, rewritten. The mind is incredibly adaptable. When you start to change what you believe about yourself and the world, your entire experience begins to shift. It starts in small ways. Maybe you begin to believe that you are capable of learning anything. That single belief changes how you handle mistakes, how you approach challenges, how you view growth. And in response, your behavior becomes more courageous, more open, more persistent. Think about this. If someone were to follow you around for a week and observe your behavior, your routines, your self-talk, your choices, what would they guess your core beliefs are? Would they guess you believe you're valuable, that you're resilient, that you're worthy of love and success? Or would they see hesitation, avoidance, or fear? That gap between your potential and your behavior is usually filled with faulty beliefs. The problem isn't your ability. It's the invisible script guiding your actions. Now, imagine changing that script. Imagine believing you are meant to grow, that failure is part of the process, that your voice matters, that your past does not define your future. With those beliefs guiding you, how differently would you behave? Would you take more risks, show up more boldly, push through discomfort instead of avoiding it? Your life would take on a completely new trajectory, not because the external world changed, but because the internal narrative did. There are people who were told they'd never succeed, and they did. People who grew up in chaos and created peace. People who failed over and over again and still rose to greatness. What separates them isn't some magic formula. It's that at some point, they chose to believe differently. They challenged the limitations in their mind. They refused to keep accepting beliefs that didn't serve them. And as a result, their behavior aligned with something higher, something more empowering. This is the power of belief. We're not always conscious of what we believe. That's why awareness is the first step to transformation. If your actions are telling you that you're stuck, afraid, or unmotivated, ask yourself what belief is driving that action. Dig deeper. Ask, what would I have to believe in order to keep behaving this way? You might uncover something old, something inherited, something that's been whispering in the background of your life for years. But once you identify it, you have the power to question it. You have the power to choose something new. There's a profound difference between believing you are born with fixed abilities and believing that you can grow, evolve, and improve through effort. A fixed mindset tells you that your intelligence, talents, and worth are set in stone, that no matter what you do, you're only capable of so much. It makes success feel like a test you either pass or fail. It makes failure feel like proof that you're not good enough. It makes effort feel pointless because, according to this belief, either you have it or you don't. And so, without even realizing it, people stop trying. They give up on their goals. They protect themselves by staying inside their comfort zones, never risking failure, because they've been conditioned to think that failure defines them. This kind of mindset starts early. A child praised only for being smart may begin to associate mistakes with being dumb, so they avoid difficult tasks to maintain the illusion of intelligence. They stick with what they know, what feels safe. That child grows into an adult who shies away from challenges, who takes criticism personally, who quits when progress isn't immediate. The fixed mindset builds invisible walls. Walls made of fear, insecurity, and it becomes easier to label yourself as not creative, not athletic, not a people person, instead of facing the discomfort of growth. And this mindset doesn't just affect academics or work, it touches every area of life: relationships, health, business, self-worth. If you think you can't change, you won't. Now contrast that with a growth mindset. A growth mindset is rooted in the belief that you can get better, that effort is meaningful, that your brain is capable of rewiring, that your potential is not predetermined, it's expandable. This kind of thinking unlocks possibility. It reframes failure as part of the journey. It encourages risk-taking because the outcome isn't the point. The learning is. A growth mindset doesn't fear criticism. It sees feedback as a gift, a way to refine, improve, get stronger. People with this mindset don't ask, "Am I good enough?" They ask, "How can I get better?" And that question changes everything. When you live with a growth mindset, your relationship with struggle shifts. Obstacles don't feel like permanent roadblocks. They become stepping stones. You stop looking at successful people with envy and start studying them with curiosity. You ask what they did, how they learned, what they overcame. And most importantly, you begin to realize that greatness isn't reserved for the lucky or the gifted. It's reserved for the persistent. For the ones who keep going, who keep learning, who refuse to give up, even when it's hard, even when it's messy, even when there's no immediate reward. This mindset creates resilience, because when your self-worth isn't tied to immediate success, you don't crumble when things go wrong. You adapt. You try again. You use every setback as a source of insight. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you start asking, "What can I take from this?" And that single shift in thinking transforms pain into purpose. People often underestimate how powerful their mindset is. They chase results, goals, outcomes, without realizing that the real engine behind those things is how they think. Your mindset drives your attitude, your discipline, your response to failure. It determines whether you blame or take responsibility, whether you stagnate or evolve, whether you fear judgment or seek feedback. The world doesn't change just because you adopt a growth mindset, but your response to the world changes entirely. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop seeing other people's success as a threat. You become more focused on progress than perfection. And progress, when pursued consistently, leads to transformation. A growth mindset allows you to reinvent yourself. It allows you to approach life with curiosity instead of fear. It fuels your ability to learn, to adapt, to endure. It doesn't eliminate discomfort, but it gives that discomfort meaning. You're no longer avoiding the hard things. You're leaning into them because you know they are making you stronger. Think about how many people remain stuck, not because they lack potential, but because they lack belief in that potential. They say, "I can't," when they really mean, "I haven't tried yet." They say, "I'm not good at that," instead of asking, "How do I get better?" Every time you choose growth, you expand your limits. You take what was once impossible and make it familiar. And as your capabilities grow, so does your confidence. Confidence that's not based on pretending to be perfect, but on knowing you can handle whatever comes next because you're committed to learning. Your brain is not a fixed machine with rigid programming. It's a living, adapting organ capable of incredible change. This concept is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Every time you think a thought, take an action, or experience something new, your brain responds. It strengthens the pathways you use most frequently and weakens the ones you ignore. In simple terms, your thoughts are not passive. They are creative. They shape the actual structure of your brain over time. These are electrical impulses that influence chemical reactions in the brain, and with repetition, they build physical networks. These networks influence how you perceive the world, how you react to situations, how you regulate your emotions, and even how your body functions under stress. This is why mindset matters so deeply. If you believe you're helpless, your brain will reinforce that belief. By filtering your experiences through a lens of powerlessness, you'll begin to notice more evidence that confirms your belief. Missed opportunities, small failures, and setbacks will all feel like proof. The more you focus on them, the stronger those neural connections become. And soon, you don't even realize you're thinking in a loop. You've simply become that loop. But the moment you begin to challenge that pattern, the brain has no choice but to respond. When you intentionally focus on new possibilities, when you start thinking in terms of growth and change, you're firing different neural pathways. The more you do this, the stronger those new pathways become. And over time, the old ones begin to weaken. It's not about forcing fake positivity. It's about redirecting your attention, your energy, your mental habits. If your brain is constantly wiring itself based on what you feed it, then the question becomes, what are you feeding it? Are you repeating stories of failure and limitation, or are you training it to see opportunity and resilience? The brain doesn't care whether a thought is good or bad. It simply builds what you tell it to. That's why the discipline of thought is so important. You can't control every thought that enters your mind, but you can control which ones you dwell on, which ones you rehearse, which ones you allow to shape your identity. Every time you choose courage over fear, your brain builds a little more strength in that area. Every time you pause instead of reacting with anger or anxiety, you're teaching your brain a new way to respond. It's like carving a new trail through a forest. At first, it's difficult. The old path is worn and easy. But the more you walk the new trail, the clearer it becomes, and the old one begins to disappear. This is the process of rewiring. It takes awareness, repetition, and intention. But it's real, and it's powerful. Your brain is always listening. It listens to the way you talk to yourself. It listens to your habits, your focus, your self-image. If you call yourself a failure every time you fall short, your brain starts to associate mistakes with shame. If you frame setbacks as learning opportunities, your brain becomes more flexible, more adaptive. What you repeatedly tell yourself becomes the story your brain tells back to you. It becomes the narrative you live by. And that narrative, whether empowering or destructive, becomes your reality. This is why visualization, affirmations, journaling, and reflection are not just motivational tools. They are mechanisms for neural change. When used with consistency and belief, they create new mental and emotional patterns. They give your brain a target, a direction, a purpose. Athletes use this science to train their performance. Leaders use it to build mental clarity and focus. Artists use it to unlock creativity. And everyday people can use it to break out of negative cycles and build a life that feels aligned with who they want to be. The key is to understand that change doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. You have to choose your thoughts the way you choose your actions, with purpose. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to recognize the power of the present moment. Every thought you repeat, every belief you reinforce, every habit you build, it all gets recorded in your brain. You're not stuck with the mind you have today. You're building the mind you'll have tomorrow. What you believe at the core of your being doesn't just stay inside your head. It leaks into everything you do, how you walk into a room, how you speak to others, how you handle stress, how you treat yourself when no one's watching. Your beliefs act as the invisible blueprint for your life. They tell you what's possible, what's worth pursuing, what's too risky, and what's out of reach. And the truth is, most people don't even realize they're being driven by beliefs they never chose. Beliefs handed to them by childhood, by society, by fear, by failure. You don't believe it's meant for you. Your actions will always try to match your identity. If you see yourself as broken, you'll act in broken ways. If you see yourself as a fighter, you'll behave like one, even in the face of difficulty. Beliefs are not surface-level thoughts. They are the silent codes that run your internal operating system. Most people focus on changing their actions, while their core beliefs remain untouched. They set goals, build routines, force discipline, but eventually they get pulled back into the same cycles, not because they're lazy or undisciplined, but because they haven't dealt with the root belief that says, "I'm not enough," or "I always mess things up," or "people like me don't succeed." Until those internal convictions change, behavior change will always feel temporary. You'll keep snapping back to the level of your belief, like a thermostat returning to its preset temperature. But here's the powerful part. Beliefs can be rewritten. Just like behavior, they're not fixed. They're built over time, through repetition, through emotion, through experience. And they can be reshaped the same way. It starts with noticing them, catching the self-talk, identifying the pattern, asking yourself, where did this belief come from? Who told me this was true? Is it really true? Or have I just accepted it without question? When you begin to challenge a limiting belief, it loses its grip on you. It becomes visible. And once something is visible, it can be changed. This is not about pretending you believe something that feels false. It's about creating space for a new possibility. Maybe you don't fully believe you can change your life, but can you believe that change is possible in general? Can you believe that growth is available to someone like you? Can you believe that just because you've failed in the past doesn't mean you're doomed to repeat it? These small shifts in belief open the door to different actions, and those actions over time create new outcomes, and those outcomes reinforce the new beliefs. It's a loop. Belief drives behavior, and behavior reinforces belief. Think about someone who starts going to the gym after years of inactivity. At first, they may not believe they're fit, strong, or athletic, but after weeks of showing up, pushing through the discomfort, and noticing small changes, something begins to shift. The behavior starts to inform the belief. They no longer see themselves as someone who can't stick with it. They start to see themselves as someone who shows up, someone who takes care of their body. And that belief leads to even more consistent action. The loop is in motion. The same applies to every area of life: relationships, money, career, self-image. If you believe you're worthy of love, you'll stop settling for half-hearted relationships. If you believe you're capable of earning more, you'll start pursuing better opportunities. If you believe your voice matters, you'll start speaking up. But those actions only come after the belief shifts, or at least begins to. And every time you act in alignment with a new belief, it gets stronger. You start to prove it to yourself, not by chanting affirmations in the mirror, but by living it.